Okay, let's try and unpack this. Today, we're diving deep into the world of dating apps.
Yeah.
You shared some really interesting sources with us. We've got a big literature review from the Annals of the International Communication Association,
Which is great for that broad overview, yeah.
definitely, and then an article from Humans looking at, modern love complexities,
Hmm.
and also this research paper, Swipe, Young People, and Online Dating in the Digital Age.
Right.
So our mission today really is to pull out the key insights. How have these apps fundamentally changed intimacy, especially for young adults?
Indeed. And we're looking beyond just, how people meet. We want to get into how apps are shaping expectations, experiences with things like, well, deception, discrimination,
Yeah,
and even how people think about relationships themselves. You mentioned wanting to get a good grasp quickly but thoroughly.
exactly.
So we'll try to balance those big trends with some, specific, perhaps surprising details from the research.
And here's something that jumped out right off the bat. One source mentioned what, like 1 in 10 Americans have used online dating,
Yeah, it's a significant number.
and a big chunk of those are young adults.
Yeah.
It's this relatively new thing, socially speaking, but it's having these really fascinating impacts on youth culture. That's a key thing we want to explore.
Absolutely. That review you mentioned really frames these apps as both a product of technology and something that actively shapes our daily lives, our connections. They're pretty central now.
For sure. It feels like they're everywhere.
And that pervasiveness, it comes up in all the sources, really. Dating apps are, well, they're a major feature of intimacy today, often debated too.
Definitely debated.
And it represents such a big shift from how people connected, even just a few decades back. We're talking mainly about the big names, right? Tinder, Bumble, Hinge.
Yeah,
They're leading the charge.
right.
That Humans article mentioned a 2021 survey, I think. 30% of U.S. adults had used an app.
30%. Wow.
But what's really striking, and the Swipe Right paper digs into this, is how much more common it is among younger people.
Yeah, that 2016 study in Swipe Right was interesting. They found, what was it, 65% of their young adults, 18 to 24-year-olds, had used some kind of online dating.
65%, that's substantial.
And get this, the apps themselves, at 40%, were way more popular than the old school dating websites, which were only like 12% for that group.
Huh. Big difference.
Yeah, and 13% were using both. And within the apps, Tinder was king back in 2016. 77% of the young adults who'd used apps or sites were on Tinder.
77%.
Yeah, OkCupid and Plenty of Fish were next, but way behind, like 28% and 23%.
It's also worth pointing out something the Swipe Right research highlighted, this gender imbalance on the apps.
Oh, right.
Yeah, often way more male users than female users, sometimes like 4-to-1.
4-to-1, really.
Yeah, and that kind of it probably impacts the whole dynamic, the user experience. We might circle back to that when we talk discrimination.
Good.
But first, maybe let's look at why young adults are even using these apps. What are their motivations and, what actually happens?
Yeah, good transition. So that Swipe Right study looked into motivations.
Hmm.
And the top one, maybe a little surprisingly, was just curiosity, 71%.
Just curious to see what it's like. Makes sense.
Yeah. Then wanting to actually go on dates was next, 58%. And finding short-term relationships, 42%.
Okay.
What's interesting is that finding long-term relationships and just looking for sexual encounters were tied, both at 34%.
Hmm. So it kind of pushes back against that idea that it's only for hookups, right?
Exactly. It challenges that common perception.
And what about the outcomes? What did they actually do?
Well, going on dates was the most common thing people reported doing, 55% in that study.
Okay.
And developing short-term casual relationships was next, 42%.
Right. But importantly, despite that hookup narrative, the research did find people forming long-term partnerships too.
Yeah, absolutely. The Swipe Right paper mentioned that.
Hmm.
So even if people start using them for various reasons, more serious connections can happen.
Definitely. The potential is there.
Okay, so shifting gears a bit to something maybe more concerning that came up in the sources, discrimination.
Ah, yes.
The literature review mentioned that women, especially heterosexual women, are like twice as likely of heterosexual men to face discrimination online.
Yeah, that's a really stark finding. Twice as likely.
It is.
And it kind of connects to another point that women are more likely to feel like someone seriously misrepresented themselves online.
Why is that, do you think?
Well, one source suggested men might generally be, let's say, less forthcoming online, particularly about things like income or assets.
I see.
And the Swipe Right study also found this was a real issue for young users. A third 33% felt they had been discriminated against on dating sites.
A third?
Yeah, and another 36% weren't even sure. So it suggests this feeling, this perception of discrimination is pretty widespread among young people online.
And what were the reasons they gave for feeling discriminated against?
The main ones in that 2016 study were about looks, basically. General appearance was 26% and weight was 19%.
Ah, so appearance-based judgment is a big factor.
Seems like it, yeah. Which makes sense given how visual these platforms are. Gender itself is also mentioned by 15%.
Okay, which I guess leads us naturally into honesty and deception. The Humans article raised that as a key concern, didn't it? Like, how real are these profiles?
Exactly. How authentic is the presentation? And the Swipe Right study had some fascinating, maybe slightly contradictory findings here.
Oh.
Well, they found that a lot of young adults, 59%, believed they'd been lied to by matches.
Okay, nearly 60%. That's high.
Yeah. Often about relationship intentions or, again, appearance.
Right.
But only 19% admitted to being intentionally dishonest themselves.
19%. That's quite a gap. 59% think they're being lied to, but only 19% admit to doing it.
It is a striking difference, isn't it? And the things they did admit to lying about were, interests, what they wanted from a relationship, weight, or height.
So, core things you'd want to know about someone. What do you make of that gap? Why the mismatch?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? It could be a few things. Maybe people overestimate how much others lie. A bit of cynicism about online stuff.
Maybe.
Or maybe people downplay their own white lies, perhaps justifying them as necessary in that environment.
Yeah, like everyone does it.
Right. Or maybe it's just that people have different ideas about what actually counts as dishonesty in that specific online dating context. Little exaggerations versus outright lies.
That's a really important point to think about. Okay, so let's zoom out a bit. What about the broader impact on relationships, on society?
Well, one source suggested something interesting. Apps expand the dating pool, obviously.
Which seems like a good thing, right? More options.
On the surface, yes. But it might also lead to the sort of mate shopping mindset.
Like mate shopping, like browsing products.
Kind of, yeah. The idea is, with so many options readily available, it might actually make it harder to commit to one person. This connects to that idea of consumer culture.
Right. The review mentioned that briefly.
Yeah, applying consumer logic, always looking for the best deal, the upgrade to relationships.
That sounds a bit bleak. And the focus on photos, the visual aspect, that probably encourages more superficial judgments too.
It certainly can, yeah. Prioritizing that immediate visual appeal over maybe deeper compatibility factors.
And what about anonymity? Does that play a role?
It might. The relative anonymity online could potentially shift how people think about fidelity, especially in relationships that start there. What counts as cheating might get a bit blurrier.
Interesting.
The Swipe Right paper sort of situated app use within this wider consumer youth culture. Maybe there's this pressure, to always be looking to find the absolute best match out there.
Leading to maybe never being satisfied.
Potentially. But despite all these challenges, it's important to note that 2016 study found half the young users felt their overall experience was positive, somewhat or very.
Okay, so it's not all negative.
Not at all. And a huge majority, 82%, saw it as just a normal thing to do.
Right, it's been normalized.
But tellingly, only 11% actually preferred meeting people online versus face-to-face.
Okay. So it's normal, it's common, sometimes positive, but maybe not the ideal way for most people.
That seems to be the takeaway, yeah. It's a tool people use, widely accepted now, but maybe not the preferred route to deep connection for everyone.
Gotcha. Now, the Humans article also brought up evolving gender roles. How does that fit in?
Yeah, that's another layer. As society's ideas about gender roles change, it creates some uncertainty in dating, doesn't it?
Like what?
Like who makes the first move, who pays for the date. Those traditional scripts are kind of up in the air for some people.
Right.
And the article stressed how important open communication is becoming to navigate that uncertainty. You kind of have to talk about expectations more explicitly.
Makes sense. And long-distance relationships came up too, right? Facilitated by this tech.
Exactly. More possible now, but they have their own hurdles. Maintaining communication, dealing with the lack of physical presence. The Humans piece really emphasized making a conscious effort to stay connected.
Yeah, that takes work.
Definitely.
And finally, consent and boundaries. Always crucial,
Yeah.
but maybe essentially highlighted now.
Absolutely essential. The Humans article really hammered this home. Clear, respectful communication about boundaries right from the start is just non-negotiable.
Good. And looking forward, what do the sources suggest about the future?
Well, the humans piece speculated, technology will keep changing things. Maybe VR dating, AR experiences, who knows?
Wow. Virtual dates?
Could be. But it also made the point that the fundamental thing that humans need for companionship, for intimacy, that's probably not going anywhere.
Let's hope not.
Right. But it is interesting to think how new tech might amplify the trends we already see, the huge pull, the visual focus, the potential for connection and for misrepresentation.
Yeah, it could heighten everything.
Could do.
So wrapping this up, what does all this mean for you, the listener? Hopefully this deep dive gave you some solid insights into this really complex world of dating apps based on the research and experiences we talked about.
Yeah, we've seen there are definite opportunities, but also real challenges. These platforms are changing so much how we meet, how we think about honesty, what even defines a relationship sometimes.
And here's something really interesting maybe for you to ponder. That big gap we talked about between how much people think they're being lied to and how much they admit to lying.
Yeah, that 59% versus 19%.
What do you think explains that? Is it just our own bias? Or does being online somehow subtly shift how we define being truthful in those first steps?
It's a fascinating question.
It really is. And look, this conversation, it's just scratching the surface, isn't it? Technology keeps moving, society keeps changing. The whole dating app landscape will continue to shift.
Absolutely. It's an ongoing story.
We hope this sparked some aha moments for you, gave you a clearer picture of this really prominent part of modern life. So now we're curious what stands out to you. What's the big takeaway you're left thinking about after this dive?